everyone. My name is Megan. I'm the Unison Elder Abuse Shelter manager, and I'm here today with Dana to talk a little bit about Family Violence Awareness Month. So Dana is a Real Talk coordinator with Sagesse. What's amazing about Sagesse is they come to the shelter quarterly to deliver the Real Talk presentations. Dana has come several times, and we're just so thankful to have her, her wealth of experience and knowledge with us today to talk about Family Violence Month, Family Violence Awareness. As everyone might know, November is kind of the month that we want to talk and show awareness for family violence. Though we should be doing this all year, I think it's really good to take pause and do it, and really try and make sure we know what it is, like how to spot it, how to prevent it, and what we can do as a community to make sure that it's not happening to us, but also to those that we love. So I'm here today with Dana. Thank you so much for coming.
Happy to be here.
Thanks, Dana. Okay, so Dana, please can you tell me a little bit more about family violence and what it is?
Sure. Yeah. So actually at Sagesse, we actually frame this more broadly under the umbrella term of domestic abuse more broadly. So when we're talking about abuse, we're basically talking about someone who might be attempting or has the intention within a relationship where there is intimacy, dependency, and trust to kind of intimidate another person, either through threats or using physical force against another person, their property. Sometimes even those threats come against somebody's pets. And the reason that people engage in these behaviors, the purpose of that abuse is control. And yeah, they can do this through exploitation, through neglect, intimidation, just really trying to kind of create fear in another person or by actually inflicting pain on them. And so, as I mentioned before, we frame it within the kind of intimacy, dependency, trust, which family relationships have those elements, generally speaking. But yeah, that's kind of how we sort of define, I guess.
Yeah.
Abuse
And the thing,
yeah.
yeah, and so the thing about family violence, when we talk about family violence, especially like with Awareness Month, family violence is like I picture it as like this umbrella, right?
Mhm.
And then everything kind of falls underneath it. So child abuse falls under family violence, right?
Yeah.
Elder abuse, which is sort of like, what we deal with at the shelter, falls under that scope. And so then when you're talking about domestic violence, I'm hearing like the trust, the intimacy, things like that. Would you regard that more like how like intimate partner violence? Like is that kind of something like are you dealing with mostly intimate partners or would you also say like the relationship between like a mother and like an adult daughter? What would like is that sort of? Can you explain it?
Yeah, it honestly, it could be both of those. And again, why we use it broadly is because, yeah, we don't only look at, say, within the family dynamics, because we do see it can happen, of course, within families and, of course, within intimate partners. And that is kind of the most common forms that we see people come in with. But we also use that term just to sort of recognize that you can even see abuse happen in relationships outside of those ones. So even say within like a caregiver relationship, right? Like if someone's in like a caregiver role for another person, you can see those things happen because that's still a relationship, right? And it has intimacy, dependency, and trust within it. So it could be like, yeah, parents and children, siblings, can be children to parents, right? Like kind of the flip side too. Yeah, spouses or people that are in sort of those long-term kind of romantic relationships. But yeah, also, yeah, sometimes friendships can have these elements to them. Sometimes, like I mentioned, like in someone in a caregiver role or in like a even like a mentor mentee role, like you can see these things happen there. But yeah, most commonly what we see at Sagesse, like people who reach out, it is more common within like sort of the family and the intimate partner sort of dynamic. Yeah.
Hmm. And that's so interesting that you even talked about like coworker relationships and things like that. that all applies. And those are just
Yeah.
things that, from like our mandate, our point of view, elder abuse very much like from the World Health Organization would describe it as like a trusted individual. And so we're looking
Yeah.
at intimate partners, but we're also looking mostly at family. So,
Yeah.
parents, adults, children, lots of grandchildren,
Yeah.
cousins, nieces, things like that. But what we have ran into trouble with, and I'm wondering if you've experienced this just with like the economic and housing sort of struggles that we're having, is with like landlord and tenant. Like, do you see anything
Mm.
like that? Or like, have you heard of like these dynamics where we wouldn't classify it as like a relationship of trust, but when you kind of really dig into it, you're kind of trusting that maybe your landlord is taking care of your rights and things like that. But I wonder if
Yeah.
you've encountered anything like that.
Personally, I haven't had like many people that I've worked with speak to that specifically, but it's definitely again another place where it can happen.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Like
yeah.
not taking care of the place properly, like with, within the responsibilities that they might have, right? Not doing
Hmm.
so. And then unfortunately for some folks, especially if they're maybe in a more vulnerable position, not maybe being in a place where they can really fight against that or really stand up or advocate for what their own rights are. And so, yeah, end up being treated really poorly in some circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah. So then in these situations, like I know that you go out and you do like programming and you facilitate talks and I think you guys run like a lot of peer support groups and things like that. And we'll talk more about that I think later on because I really want to get like a full scope about, what is Sagesse offering in the community today because you guys really are like the experts on, domestic violence and I think that you have some really good ideas about community engagement that I'm excited to highlight. But when we talk more about family violence, how might we recognize it? And so
Sure.
I just want to backtrack because when we talk about like elder abuse,
Hmm.
some things are very obvious, right? Like if there's a physical aspect to
Right.
it, or like really, really, terrible name calling and like words and heightened voices and things like that. Those are things that we can kind of see. But when you talk about control, okay, and we talk about like manipulation, coercive control, things that are like a little bit behind the closed doors. How are we seeing it? And I want to understand like what can our viewers today or our community members do if they might suspect it?
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. Like a lot of these things can be a little bit more hidden, and that's often intentional, right? Because the person who is engaging in coercive controlling behaviors, like they mean for it to be hidden. It's hidden, it's kind of low level, and by that I mean like it can be a little bit more subtle. So the person who's experiencing it, like they know what's going on. They maybe know what the underlying messages might be that they're getting from the person. But yeah, externally, sometimes it's hard to recognize those things. But some things that we might be able to notice kind of from the outside, maybe we notice changes in someone's behavior. Maybe we notice that they get nervous or scared when they're speaking about someone or whether that certain person is around or might hear them. They just seem really anxious about or around a certain person. Um, Maybe does it seem like they're being isolated from others? Maybe are they talking about like, oh, I haven't seen them in so long. No, maybe so and so caregiver person or family member won't let me talk to them or they will never let me see that person. Like, are there maybe some signs or things they're sharing that might signal they're being isolated from others? Have you noticed signs of neglect? And again, it might just be like kind of gradual things that you've noticed over time, right? Do they look like maybe hygienically they're not as well taken care of over time? And I know you probably have more examples of what that can look like, but are there any signs of potential financial abuse? Does it seem as though they are not having access to finances anymore, or someone else really trying to control it, or telling them things that, or they're maybe sharing things with you with regard to finances that make you go like, no, I don't think that's correct, or oh, my grandchild or so and so said I have to do this thing and I have to, and you're like, no, I don't. That seems a little fishing to me, or I've never heard of that being something that, you need to do, or who knows, right? Like these little things. Um, yeah, does it seem like maybe they're being monitored or surveilled? Is there someone always sort of hovering around that seems like, again, that anxiety piece that someone might be showing up with? Are they having to always share their location? Are they always having to tell someone where they are, like at all times, and maybe constantly check in? Just does it seem like maybe their independence or their freedom or their agency is being restricted by someone else? I hope that helped. Like there are a few things, but again, these can be hard to pick up on the outside.
Yeah. And we do see a lot of that with elder abuse. Obviously, like the change of like personality or like limiting someone's access to finances, of course, but like what about like their friends or their like religious community and things like that. We see that a lot.
Yeah.
Now, just going back to like this idea of coercive control, can you explain that a little bit? Because I feel like this is almost like not a new term, not a
Okay.
new
Yep.
term, but a newer term in the community of abuse, and then especially with older adults. Like, what does coercive control mean? And I think that it means something different, like maybe in like an intimate partner relationship than it does like in other relationships. But I do want to get more of information about that.
Sure. And so originally, kind of that term was framed sort of within that intimate partner dynamic. But broadly speaking, it really is when one person is intentionally trying to kind of dominate and restrict another person's daily activities and kind of chip away at their own freedom, their own liberty, their own agency, right? So, yeah, it is just somebody really intentionally trying to control another person's decision making, what they do, who they see, who they spend time with, how they spend their money. Yeah, and it made me think of like before when you were talking and brought up like the financial piece, like this can even happen. It's a little bit outside of the scope, but sometimes you hear about like scams that folks are falling prey to, right? And like really predatory kind of agencies and people that are trying to manipulate folks into maybe signing up for a thing or a subscription to something or like some sort of financial commitment that maybe they don't fully understand or feel pressured to have to participate in or enroll in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And would you say like having that, would you call that person like isolating somebody to really keep them in this little box, right? And really just kind of control everything that they're doing. Isolation's huge. Isolation is, a really big problem for our seniors.
Hmm.
But also those who are being harmed when they're isolated, they can't talk about,
Yeah.
what's happening and who are they
Yeah.
meant to go to. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing. Yeah. And I'm wondering too, like, with all of these manipulations and coercive control and isolation, like, would you say that if someone kind of is doing this to a loved one, a family member, an intimate partner,
Hmm.
something like that, we might see this grow. Like this might be, does it feel like, okay, we might have to like pause here a little bit because I'm trying to figure
Okay.
out what I'm trying to say. I'm
Okay.
trying to say like, does this like if someone starts with coercive control, is it possible that it's gonna grow to like some like a bigger problem? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like lead to like physical abuse or lead
It,
to something
yeah,
different.
it can
Yeah.
potentially. And it's challenging because yeah, unfortunately, there's no like set linear every time it's going to start like this, and then this happens, and then this, and then that, right? Like that's what's so kind of tricky about it because
Yeah.
it's not just like a black and white checklist of this is, this isn't, then this happens, then that. But there is that risk.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There is the risk of things escalating to the point where there is a physical element to it, or perhaps that physical element is just threatened for a long time. But
Mhm.
yeah, you sometimes see if someone feels like they need to up the ante to maintain the control, then
Yeah.
then they might. Yeah.
Yeah. And can you speak to like triggering events? Now, what we've noticed at the shelter, um, is kind of like a lull around holiday season. Okay, if you take the temperature outside, out of the picture, out of the equation, we've
Hmm.
noticed a bit of a lull. around holidays, not just Christmas, but just the regular holidays. And we've
Mhm.
kind of discerned that it's because people are usually happier, right? You're having maybe more family time, maybe more people are around. And so you're not
Mhm.
having the explosive arguments, you're not having the abuse that maybe previously you did have.
Mhm.
And so, everyone's kind of excited and happy to be there. And you start thinking to yourself, like, you know what? It's changed. Okay, my dynamic with my daughter, it's better now. We've solved it.
Mhm.
Or, me and my partner, we're in a good spot because, for the last 2 weeks there hasn't been a fight or there hasn't been any kind of abuse. And then Christmas or whichever holiday kind of ends, the calendar moves on, and then the
Yeah.
bills come. Okay. And then we start to feel stressed because we're like, uh-oh, overspent, overdid it,
Yep.
family's gone, no one's watching, and now things are different. So can
Yeah.
you speak a little bit about, like, we know that coercive control, and it's about having somebody in this little box and making sure that they can control the narrative, control the situation. But what is it looking like with triggers and with like economic stress? I think we
Yeah.
can all speak to COVID and how that was such an effect on so many vulnerable people in our community.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, definitely. You can see external stressors can increase the risk for sure. So just a very broad stat that we use is about 1 in 3 people will have experienced abuse at some point in their life. Um, that's that stat, like I said, is very generalized, and there can be reasons why those rates are a little bit higher or maybe a little bit lower. But to your point about those external stressors, we know that when there is like financial stresses, when there's like just external pressures, yeah, that can increase the risk that somebody starts to engage in this behavior, someone else, starts to experience it. Places that are prone to more like boom and bust economies, like we are here, right? You can see the rates be a little bit higher. Again, speaking to that financial maybe instability, maybe somebody is only getting shorter term contracts, or maybe they're having to then travel for work or work away. So then they're away a lot, and that can like add stress, right? So those things can happen. Places that have experienced natural disasters, you can actually see the rates of abuse increase for up to a year following that disaster, right? And for similar reasons, like there's that external stress, there's these external pressures that are weighing on a person, and that can sometimes result in them, kind of lashing out or engaging in these behaviors because yeah, they're needing to have that control. With regard to the holidays, it's tricky to say, right? Because for some, especially when you're talking about coercive control, like because it's meant to be hidden, because it's kind of more low level, it's cumulative, but it's frequent. So it's kind of always happening. So the tricky thing is even though there's other people around, it could still be happening. It's just not necessarily something that other people are going to be able to pick up on.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's kind of the tricky thing. But yeah, in some cases, like just broadly speaking, we often see a bit of a lull in the summer as far as like the number of people participating in our peer support groups and stuff, because a lot of people, you're on vacations, you're doing stuff. That doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't still experiencing abuse during that time, right? But it just means, well, we're still going on vacation and we're still going to be away and we're still, doing these things, but I can't necessarily participate in programming right now for because of that. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean they won't still be experiencing it. It might just be a little bit different during that time. And yeah, it could, you know, kind of be a little less, but yeah, it's so tricky because these things are so individual too, just depending
Mhm.
on the dynamics of the relationships, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And when we think about intimate partner violence, it was a number of years ago, so I really couldn't speak to the number now, but there was a statistic that like it took a certain amount of times on average for a person to leave. Does that still reign true?
Yeah, like it still often is several attempts. And there's kind of, we sometimes talk about there being like a spectrum of leaving, and it goes everywhere from like never gonna leave to planning to leave and everywhere in between, right? And people can go from like one end to the other multiple times throughout the course of a relationship. Um, I have a colleague who did a real talk a year or two ago and shared a story of someone who had told them that they knew of a person who had left an abusive marriage after 50 years, 50 years, right? So
Yeah,
it's just like, yeah. And I don't know for this particular case, like if the person had attempted to, or if there had been other times kind of during that time that they had or not. I don't know, but I do know that they were in it for 50 years when it was
yeah,
finally like they just, excuse me, they decided to leave it.
yeah,
But yeah, there can be several attempts that a person makes, and it's complicated, right? It's hard. There's a lot of trade-offs people are making. Lives get intermingled. Like if you have kids, like there's a lot there. And if we consider whether someone has been experiencing maybe like financial abuse or different things like that, like it can be hard to
mm,
leave, even if you want to do that, right? Like, what's the financial situation? We know affordability is just like doesn't even exist anymore, it seems, right? So that can be really challenging. And people often really love this person despite the fact of what they're experiencing too, right? And so it can be
yeah,
really hard to walk away from maybe what you had before or the potential that you see or just like all those connections that you have to the person. And that's
yeah,
hard for us on the outside, right? To sometimes
yeah,
understand, but it's important to remember because
yeah.
it's complicated for people. Yeah.
It's not easy. I
Yeah.
know at the shelter, right, we have 14 beds and I can't really speak to the people that we have right now, but um
Hmm.
we do have the 14 beds and many of which of course with elder abuse is that trust relationship, so it's usually the family member,
Hmm.
usually the children, usually the adult children, the grandchildren.
Hmm.
I've never seen a situation where they're in active reporting of their
Hmm.
abuse.
Hmm.
So they come to us and they just want to restart, right? And
Yeah.
you explore it. I mean, it's their business, of course, if they need support with it. But I always wondered, we kind of explore that a little bit in case management. And I would say is there any like legal interventions happening? Did you make a report? Like, where are you at with that? And it's always, no, I don't
Yeah.
want to. Like, it's my kid. That's my kid.
Yeah.
That's my grandkid.
Yeah.
I just want to restart. Or that's my
Yeah.
husband. I just want to restart. My wife. Um, I just
Yeah.
want to restart. I don't want to go through all of that. I care about them. I don't want them to be in trouble. And this is just about me starting fresh. It's like,
Yeah.
fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's the interesting thing to keep in mind too. I'm glad you brought that up because even a lot of the stats we have, they're not necessarily fully accurate, right? Because those are based on people actually reporting. And like you
Yeah.
say, if a lot of people aren't, like they're coming to you or that maybe they're coming to us or whatever that is, they might, no one else might know. It's like I'm not doing anything official, but just here's
Yeah.
what I'm experiencing and I'm trying to move on from it. So even the
Yeah.
statistics we have are not perfect by any means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, what can we do as like community members, even service professionals, even, friends, family? What can we do if we suspect abuse is happening? And where can we go?
Yeah, for sure. So I think some important things we can do is to check in, and it depends on the relationship you have with the person, like how you approach that, right? But generally, the way I kind of talk about doing this, or a good way to maybe start, is just telling the person that you care about, the person you're concerned about, like just stating kind of the facts of things maybe you've noticed or seen or witnessed or just the concerns that you have and just say like, hey, I have noticed, if you talk or if you bring it back to maybe some of the things I said before, like I've noticed you seem really anxious around so and so, and you always are really worried if they're around. And it sounds like you don't really get to participate in any of the clubs you were before. Like you really seem to have to be very limited into what you do, whatever it is. But just like I've noticed XYZ, and I'm concerned and I wanted to check in about it. Right. So you can, yeah, so you can just approach it that way. It's important again to be empathetic, just to kind of remove judgment, because we often don't really know a lot of what's happening, but we have concerns. Um, and then, yeah, there are resources available, just depending on if they're looking for them, right? Sometimes when you ask the questions, folks might not be ready to talk about it and might say everything's fine, right? Um, which is their right to do. But hopefully, at least in that check-in or that initial sort of ask, we've approached it in an empathetic way. And so that person feels comfortable to maybe reach back out to us if they get to a place where maybe they want to talk about it, right? Because we've laid that foundation, we've showed our concern. We weren't judgmental. We just let them know, like, we've noticed these things and we wanted to let them know that we're there to support. And then from there, you can see if they're open to maybe looking at the resources that could be available, if they're wanting to talk to someone about it, and if you, as the support person, maybe don't feel comfortable or feel like you're a bit out of your depth beyond that initial check-in. Yeah, just to know that, Sagesse is available. They could reach out to us to either even just talk about their concerns and how to approach it, or to see what we have available for programming for peer support groups. There are a number of resources that are available to folks. So yeah, just really just doing that check-in piece, it shows that you care.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what if, for example, you do that check-in piece and they are just like,
Hmm.
no,
Yeah.
how dare you get out of here? What are
Fair.
we doing as the concerned person? What are we doing to help?
Yeah, and I think in that case, like, and again, this is very sort of dependent on, well, a lot of things, but it's kind of accepting that in the moment. And I'm speaking now of a place of they're not in imminent danger, like things like that, right? Because that's a whole other can of worms. But if
Yeah.
it's just like the place of like you're concerned and you've brought up these concerns and the person is like you said, nope, get out of here, don't want to talk about it. In that moment, you can just apologize, just say, I didn't want to upset you. I didn't want to pry. I had these concerns. I wanted to check in, but like yeah, we don't have to talk about it now. But if there's ever
Hmm.
anything, just please know that I'm here,
Yeah. Leave the
right?
door open.
Because it's the tricky balance because people
Yeah.
can get really defensive too, right? Especially if
Yeah.
they're maybe not recognizing things or ready or are afraid of what could come next, so
Yeah.
it can be hard as a support person, but to just kind of walk alongside them, where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And when we think about resources, right, I always
Mhm.
like to say, the shelter has the 24-hour resource line, elder abuse resource line. It's always staffed to get some support that way, not a reporting line, because again, some people just aren't ready for that, and that's not us,
Yeah.
right? That are resources, and we want to be able to help the community in that way. So, what does they just offer? I've referred a lot of people there, so I already know what they offer. If
Yeah.
you could tell our viewers, like some of the programs that you guys have.
Yeah.
And then if, for example, there is something, maybe a reporting line or a resource line that you would give to clients just as like a backup, as something that they can hold. When we talk about safety planning, we always talk about like make sure you've got phone numbers, make sure you've got things on hand, because when the day comes, when you're ready, you're going to need to use them. So
Yeah.
what does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. And so sorry, you're gonna have to cut this part, but I'm just gonna pull up my resources from my uh,
Yeah,
just so
totally.
I because I don't know them off by
Okay,
heart.
good. Because I
I think
really
I
need
do, but I
some.
don't know that
I
I
need I need
100%
my
do.
root beer. I need my root beer break.
Ooh, root beer. I haven't had one of those in so long.
It's delicious. It's very,
Oh.
yeah, that's nostalgic.
Oh, good stuff. Okay. So as far as resources that Sagesse has ourselves to offer, I think I mentioned that we do offer peer support programs, and we do. So we've got a few different options in the peer support kind of space. We have one group peer support option that's called Finding Our Voices. That one runs once a week for 6 weeks. And really, the focus of that one is on empowerment, it's on rebuilding self esteem, healthy communication, kind of relationships. That's sort of what that one's based around. We have another one that's called the Growth Circle. That one is more intensive. It goes more specifically into the experience of abuse and trauma, talking about like what does that look like? What are triggers? Kind of how do you heal? It looks at boundaries, safety. There's mindfulness elements built in. That one runs once a week for 14 weeks. And these are peer support. So it's not group therapy, it's not counseling, it's facilitated by a volunteer, but it's really meant to be client led. So whoever is there in the room and joins the group, we've got lots of kind of prompts for what to talk about, activities we can do, but really each week it's what does the group want to kind of tackle that week? Like what are they feeling? What are they wanting to share and talk about? And then we kind of build it around that. And so those are two of our group ones. They are offered online and in person. There's no charge. And there's new groups starting really every few weeks. So typically, if you call and you do an intake and find out when they are, if the schedule doesn't work, maybe this month, odds are pretty good that in the next month or two that you'll find one that does, because they try to kind of change the times and offerings around. The third peer support option that we have is called Step Forward. And same thing, it's not counseling, it's not therapy, but you do get paired individually with one of our volunteers. So as opposed to being in a group setting, you get paired with somebody one-on-one. There's lots of people who will participate in a group first and then move on and do one of these afterwards, or sometimes vice versa, or sometimes only one or only the other. We kind of want it to be whatever, the person feels would be best suited for them at that time. So that's another offering. We have a clinical support team. They are a group of social workers that are available. So if anyone wants to call in and either talk about something that they're experiencing, either because you just want someone to talk to, or you are looking for resources, they can help connect to resources, maybe do some system navigation if people have questions around like, oh, I heard there's this benefit I can potentially apply for, or different things like that, or I need to break my lease. Is there a way that I can do it? So they can help sort of navigate those things. And what's great about the team is we know we can't do all the things for everybody. So if someone reaches out and we don't have the exact program or whatever it is that you're looking for, we'll do our best to connect you to who does. And so we're open Mondays through Fridays, 9 to 4:30. And our clinical support team is there during those hours as well. They can be reached at 403-234-7337. Extension 1 gets you to that team specifically. But outside of those hours, there is the Alberta Family Violence Info Line at 310-1818. There's a mental health helpline. It's 1-877-303-2642. 211 Alberta is another one that you can call. And basically, you can find that online. If you were to just Google 211 Alberta, it would come up. And that essentially provides a database that you can search by location, and you can search for whatever the issue is that you're needing support with. So it's basically social services throughout the province. Or you can call 211 24/7 as well. So those are a few. And on our website, www.sagesse, so SAGESSE.org. We also have a resource hub available on that website. It asks a few questions and then it sort of filters through to find maybe some more targeted resources for what you might be looking for. So those are a few things that we've got on offer.
That's amazing, Dana. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you
Yeah.
for all the work that you do. Thank you for Sagesse. Thank you for coming and supporting the shelter. Every couple months with our clients, this relationship has been just so impactful for not only the staff, but also for our clients. And we're just so appreciative of you. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me.